Hey everybody. I'm flipped out. I had heard this mentioned in the past few days, but it did not really sink in. And it's sinking in now. I'm going to put a few links to several stories below this video, but I encourage you to just do a Google search yourself on this. And I really want you to take a moment to grasp what I'm about to say to you here. The UN is seeking to intervene in the border crisis. The UN, the United Nations, would like for us to treat these illegal immigrants as refugees and give them sanctuary. Now, you can blow that off. But let me put the image in your head. You remember the protest that the citizens of Marietta, California did the other day? The bus was bringing in a busload of illegal immigrants to just drop them off in the middle of the town, and the residents said no. And they got together and they stopped the bus and turned the bus away. If the United Nations would be to get their way, the way that story would have played out would have been the citizens got together to protest, but before they could block the buses, the United Nations police, army, would have arrested and detained them for interference. Picture that. You know, we've been talking for the last few years about all the FEMA camps and the United Nations training on American soil and the UN Small Arms Treaty, all these different things. We've talked a lot about if the economy crashes, if we would have a major natural disaster such as Yellowstone blowing, all these different scenarios that we've all played out in our head about. We know that by majority American soldiers will not turn on their own citizens. Who would be the ones to detain us and put us into the FEMA camps? The United Nations. It's been an answer to a theory, a theoretical answer to a theory, but nonetheless, what bothers me is, as you all know, I've kind of minimalized in my analyzation about the border crisis. I've minimalized it because we've always had illegal immigrants, and we need some of them. There are jobs I don't want to do, and there's farmers that can't afford to pay American wages, and you know, this is how they survive. All that's good. Every one of us practically is here due to an immigrant, other than the Native Americans, obviously. Some of those immigrants were illegal and some were legal. You know, some became legal later or had a child. You know, the process has not been enforced strictly in recent decades. And that has been a little bit of a burden on the system. Let's just be honest. This whole thing of me paying my tax dollar and struggling day to day to put a tank of gas in my car so I can get to work, to pay that tax dollar, then being used to house, clothe, educate, medicate, prepare, and give grants for businesses to be... It's always been a point of contention for me. But the legal immigrants, I have a little affinity towards. You know, I'm good with that. I like the American dream. But for the United Nations to say, we want to intervene. They're working on doing an intervention. The United Nations is seeking to intervene. Process this. This is a problem. If they did that, if they take that step forward and they say to the world, guess what? Americans cannot stop you from entering their country illegally. You will now be considered a refugee under United Nations protection instead of an illegal immigrant. Well, that's a shortcut to crashing our economy because we cannot afford that process. We cannot afford for the rest of Mexico and Central America and even potentially South America to come up here as a refugee versus an illegal immigrant. It's easy enough on the illegal immigrants, but a refugee, you ain't got to show up at court in 6 months. As a refugee, you are protected. So my point being, you know, the talk that we've done the last couple of years about the FEMA camps, about the UN training here on U.S. soil, what's that all about? Is it Obama, Obama, Obama? This may be the false flag, guys. The immigrant crisis may be the false flag that we've all been wondering what it was going to be. Was it going to be a meteor fall out of the sky, an EMP attack, you know, this, that, and the other? And I think it's something that we need to really keep a close eye on. You know, there's a lot of websites that are posting articles out that I don't know if I should trust them or not, but then there's other websites as well that I do trust. It says, this one in particular that I'll put the link to below, says representatives of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees are intensely discussing the possibility of extending United Nations protection to the thousands of Central Americans crossing the United States border with Mexico illegally by defining them as refugees who are seeking asylum from political and domestic violence in their home nations. I'll put links below.